This episode is brought to you by my friend Rebecca Walser, a financial expert who can help you protect your wealth. Book your free call with her team by going to friendofdinesh.com. That's friendofdinesh.com. Coming up, this episode, which is titled Crooked and Crookeder, I'll show how Biden's corruption makes the Clinton corruption look mild by comparison. I'll reveal why the other Trump cases are just as groundless as the two New York cases. I want to expose the machinations of a never-Trump judge who consistently validates the Democratic narrative, and I'll make the case for a national forgetting of some of the crimes of the distant past. Hey, if you're watching on Rumble or listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to the podcast. I'd appreciate it. This is Dinesh D'Souza Show.
Needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
I want to talk in this segment about the corruption of the Bidens, a corruption that makes Hillary corruption look mild by comparison. But before I do, I want to take note of an interesting story. The Kremlin is claiming that it was struck by two Ukrainian drones. And this, according to Putin, was an attempt to assassinate Putin and Putin's family. And there's a video that I've seen on social media of sort of some flares of light and some smoke around the Kremlin. And Moscow goes, hey, listen, if you do this, we reserve the right to respond in kind. I guess what they mean is they reserve the right to strike at Zelensky himself and his family. Now, there are some people saying, and again, doesn't seem to be any clear proof here on either side, that this is a false flag, that this is something the Kremlin may have done itself, and this didn't really happen. We don't know. And but if it did happen, then it is an escalation, and there have been a lot of people who have been warning that we are moving closer to a very dangerous level of escalation, drawing the United States and NATO directly into this conflict. And let's remember that Russia remains a very dangerous and nuclear-tipped power. They've got a lot of nuclear weapons. They're also allied with China, which has a lot of nuclear weapons. And so this is not something to be taken lightly. So it's a story we'll continue to follow. But let's turn to Joe Biden. The latest development comes from the House Oversight Committee. A letter has gone out, a subpoena has gone out to FBI Director Christopher Wray, and the subpoena is coming from the Oversight Committee. It's signed by both James Comer from the House and also in the Senate, Chuck Grassley. Now, what's this all about? Evidently, a credible whistleblower has come forward and has said that Biden and the Biden family are part of a criminal scheme featuring, quote, money for policy decisions. Now, we know from the corruption of the Bidens that we've been talking about for many weeks that this is what the Bidens do. This is, in fact, how they got rich. This is how they went from being on a government salary to owning multiple homes, accumulating tens of millions of dollars. Money is coming in from China, from Ukraine, also from many other places. Here's what the letter says, quote, "We have received legally protected and highly credible unclassified whistleblower disclosures. Based on those disclosures, it has come to our attention that the Department of Justice and the Federal Bureau of Investigation possess an unclassified FD 1023 form that describes an alleged criminal scheme involving then Vice President Biden and a foreign national related to the exchange of money for policy decisions." I mean, bribery, clear and simple. Now, the point here is not just that the Bidens are doing it and did it, but they are being protected because what the Oversight Committee is saying is that the FBI and the DOJ now have in their possession proof that Biden sold favors for money. And this is apparently contained on a form called the FD 1023 form. Quote, "It has been alleged that the document includes a precise description of how the alleged criminal scheme was employed, as well as its purpose." So not just that there was a criminal scheme, but the details of the scheme. And based on the alleged specificity within the document, it would appear that the DOJ and FBI have enough information to determine the truth and accuracy of the information contained within it. And then the Oversight Committee goes, so what have you done about it? We have oversight over you. We have every right to determine what you're doing about this and to have this information accessible to us also. So this is a new development, but a new development that confirms and maybe provides more texture and more detail to something that we've known about for some time. We know, of course, that Hunter Biden, James Biden, Frank Biden have been the bag men collecting tens of millions of dollars from business relationships all over the world. We also know that contrary to Joe Biden's assertions, I don't know anything about my son's business dealings, a flat-out prevarication, a flat-out lie, Biden would meet with these business associates. He was actively involved in the scheme. No surprise, he's head of the mafia family that is carrying them out. It's really important, though, to pin this down and to move it forward and bring it from investigation to indictment. And this is really what the media and the left will resist desperately. Right now, they're keeping a kind of dead silence about this. Their basic idea is we haven't really seen any proof that there's any there. And so I think the subpoena is very much the way to go because it forces the hand of the DOJ and Christopher Wray. It forces them to disclose what they have. And if they say they're not going to do it, then it becomes even more incriminating and the House will need to up the ante very dramatically. We clearly have a crook. I mean, if Hillary was a crook, remember Trump's crooked Hillary, Biden is even crookeder. The Hillary scheme was bad. The Biden scheme is even worse, and it actually involves the deployment of multiple family members. At least with the Clintons, they tried to channel the money through a nonprofit and claim that this was sort of for a public purpose. With Biden, there's no pretense. The money goes straight from the Chinese, straight from the Ukrainians, straight from these foreign entities into a suitcase, into the pockets and bank accounts of the Bidens themselves. I don't know about you, it takes a lot to shock me these days, but to see our judicial system resemble a third world banana republic, to see trusted American companies embrace insane and destructive woke ideologies is frankly depressing. We must fight back, and that starts with changing the way we spend our money. For years, big mobile companies have been dumping millions into leftist causes, and we just had to take it because another option didn't exist. Well, now it does. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. It offers dependable nationwide coverage on all three major networks so you get the best possible service in your area without the woke propaganda pushed by leftists working hard to destroy this country. When you switch to Patriot Mobile, you support free speech and religious freedom, the sanctity of life, Second Amendment, and our military veterans and first responder heroes. Their 100% US-based customer service team makes switching easy. Just go to Patriot Mobile, that's M-O-B-I-L-E, patriotmobile.com/Dinesh, or call them 878-PATRIOT. Get free activation today with the offer code Dinesh. Ask about their coverage guarantee while you're there. patriotmobile.com/Dinesh or call 878-PATRIOT. Have you noticed that the New York case against Trump, this is Alvin Bragg's case, a campaign finance case that is kind of tied to a false records case, the attempt to show that Trump paid hush money to Stormy Daniels, and that this somehow constitutes a violation of federal campaign finance law, and also that Trump's company falsified records to conceal the payment. All of this, you notice, has just vanished from the news. We see not a word about it. And I think it's because the left has realized that this case is a dud. It's likely to go nowhere. And so as you follow commentary from the left and from the Democrats, they're like, well, that might have been a misfire, but guess what? We got big cases coming up in Georgia. We got big cases coming up from the special counsel, Jack Smith. So there's a kind of a three-pronged legal attack on Trump. And I'm not even counting the E. Jean Carroll rape case. I'm talking about the Bragg case, the Georgia case, and the Jack Smith Mar-a-Lago raid case. But the point I want to make here is that those two cases are no less inane, no less vacuous than the Alvin Bragg case. There's no there. And we need to just look at them briefly to see what those are all about. Now, I don't deny that Fani Willis, a left-wing Democrat, Fulton County DA, may very well bring charges on the Georgia case against Trump. But what is this case even all about? Supposedly it's about Trump trying to obstruct the process of vote counting in Georgia. And all of it comes down to really a single phone call. Of course, Fani Willis is going to argue, no, it's a lot more than that. There were lots of Trump allies in Georgia and outside of Georgia who were trying to interfere with the process. But of course, none of that has directly to do with Trump, unless Trump specifically directed all those people to do what they're doing. The question is, what is it that Trump did? If it's a case against Trump, you've got to show that Trump did something. Well, what did Trump do? Trump had a phone call with Brad Raffensperger, and you got to look at the full transcript of the call, because if you peel out the one line, quote, find me 11,780 votes, by itself, it can be read. That sentence is ambiguous. That Trump is either saying, hey, I did win Georgia legitimately. I want you to find me the votes that are not being counted. Or Trump could be saying, go and find me the votes no matter how you do it, even if you have to sort of conjure them up or manufacture them. That, of course, would be incriminating. But when you read the full context of the call, that is not what Trump is saying. No one more than Trump firmly believes and believed that he won the state of Georgia. And so he was indignant that there were various types of shenanigans, as he saw it in Georgia, preventing him from getting his just result. And so that being the case, where is the case then? What is Trump trying to do? If Trump honestly believes that he won Georgia, he has every right to fight and contest and call to say, hey, listen, I believe I have the votes. Go find them. So none of this is really a crime. And so my guess is that they will try hard and they will push. But there again, this case has no more meritorious than the Alvin Bragg case. And then we turn to the special counsel Jack Smith's case. And what makes that case absolutely, I think, impossible is the simple fact that everything that is alleged against Trump, or almost everything alleged against Trump, has also been done by Biden. Trump has classified documents. Biden has classified documents. Trump took them dating back to his time as president, but Biden had documents going back from his days in the Senate. So Biden's tenure with these documents is far greater. Trump at least had them in a locked room in Mar-a-Lago. Biden's documents were thrown all over the place, including in his garage. Trump never at any time used the documents in any way that we know of, like trying to either sell them or provide them, use them as a basis of access to any foreign entities. Nothing like that is not even alleged. With Biden, there is the credible allegation that Hunter Biden was using access to these documents to basically sell influence. So in all these comparisons, the comparison is in Trump's favor. Now, the New York Times, recognizing all this, basically goes, well, yeah, but Biden hasn't tried to obstruct justice. He has been cooperative with the authorities. Trump was cooperating with the authorities. Trump is under no obligation to just turn over documents because he's asked for them. There's a back and forth process that goes on and was going on. The FBI had already instructed and told the Mar-a-Lago people to put an additional lock on the warehouse, and which was done. So the documents were secure. As I say, there's no allegation they were mishandled in any way. And so think about it. With this double standard so blatantly in front of us, I mean, Trump and Biden. And so what are you going to do? Indict Trump? not indict Biden. This would be so blatant and nakedly political that I think even Jack Smith, who is a left-wing ideologue, is going to really have to think twice before bringing that kind of a criminal charge. Debbie and I made the New Year's resolution, let's lose some weight, and thankfully PhD Weight Loss came to our rescue. We started the PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition program 13 weeks ago. Debbie has already lost almost 18 pounds and I'm down 25 pounds. Wow. The program is based on science and nutrition, no injections, no pills, no long hours in the gym, no severe calorie restriction, just good, sound, scientifically proven nutrition. It's so simple. They make it easy by providing 80% of your food at no additional cost. They'll tell you when to eat and what to eat. And guess what? You can do this without ever being hungry. The founder, Dr. Ashley Lucas, has her PhD in chronic disease and sports nutrition. She's a registered dietitian. She helps people lose weight and, more important, maintain that weight loss for life. So if you're ready to take the step of losing weight, like Debbie and I have, call PhD Weight Loss and Nutrition at 864-644-1900, or you can find them online at myphdweightloss.com. The number again to call, 864-644-1900. It's time. I want to talk about this never Trump phenomenon and focus my attention on a never Trump judge, a former judge that you may not have heard of. His name is J.MichaelLuttig. But this never Trump business is very interesting because, as we've seen now in many other cases, you have guys who start off and they're like, I can't stand Trump. Trump is terrible. And they go on a rampage against Trump. And after a while, you realize that they're attacking DeSantis. And after a while, you realize they're attacking the Republican Congress. And then they're attacking the Republican Party. And then, as we'll see in this case, they start attacking Republican nominees and Supreme Court justices. So why do they do this? I think an important reason is that once they break with Trump, they, and that could be because of personal animus, some falling out, in the case of George Conway, or Mr. Kellyanne Conway, as Trump calls him. He wanted a big job in the Trump administration. He didn't get it. There was sort of a feud, and then he becomes a kind of a never Trumper. And so initially the break could be personal, or could be limited to Trump, or even Trump's actions, or even Trump's character. But then these guys realize that they become heroes on the left. They start getting invited on CNN. They start getting lionized in the media. They start getting all kinds of accolades. In some cases, Bill Kristol and others. They start finding it to be very lucrative. Left-wing billionaires start meeting with them and funding their operations and favored causes and so on. So suddenly you realize it is not only cool, but highly profitable to be a kind of paid hitman against the Republicans as a former Republican. Here's an article from CNN about this J.MichaelLuttig. And notice how they rely heavily on the fact that he's a conservative. Here's the headline. Leading conservative former judge warns Supreme Court it must adopt highest standard of ethics rules. And then first line of the article. In a carefully worded but blunt statement, conservative former federal judge J.MichaelLuttig. It goes on. The statement, this is a statement by Luttig to the Senate Judiciary Committee, quote, is especially notable because of his conservative credentials. So what CNN is basically doing here is saying even this conservative thinks that Clarence Thomas is out of line. The Supreme Court needs a code of ethics. And so the value of J.MichaelLuttig is not any of his judicial opinions, but rather the fact that he comes with the kind of conservative label, the conservative brand. Now, this guy is a conservative from the old days, but I mean the old days. I don't know how old he is. I'm sort of guessing about 90. But the reason I say that is because he clerked for Chief Justice Warren Burger. Warren Burger was the Chief Justice in the early 1950s at the time of the Brown decision. So this guy is antediluvian. He's ancient. But what he's done now is that he has intervened in the Clarence Thomas business, and he's telling the Senate, and this is the Democrats in the Senate, he's going to go nowhere in the House. And so what he's saying is not really going to come to pass. So we don't need to we can approach J.MichaelLuttig amused and unterrified. But what he's basically saying is the Supreme Court must adopt a code of ethics that would prohibit the kind of conduct that Clarence Thomas has engaged in. Well, what is Clarence Thomas engaged in? Apparently, he's gone on vacations and stayed in the vacation home of Harlan Crow. Apparently, Harlan Crow bought his old family house for like $100,000 and is turning it into a sort of mini museum. And the latest revelation, Harlan Crow paid for some college tuition, not for Clarence Thomas, not for Clarence Thomas's children, but for a grandnephew of Clarence Thomas. So whoop-de-doo. Of course, you see in the headlines about this, Clarence Thomas didn't disclose it, Dinesh. And I say, well, show me in the disclosure requirements where it says that if a friend pays tuition for your grandnephew, it has to be disclosed. Where is that in the disclosure requirements now? Well, Dinesh, that only shows the need for stronger ethics standards. Why? Are there cases that Harlan Crow has brought before the Supreme Court in which he has a vested interest? This is not even being alleged. So Clarence Thomas's behavior here is unimpeachable. It's perfectly fine. He disclosed what he needed to disclose, and he didn't disclose what he didn't have to disclose. And yet they are so bent on getting this guy, even more than they don't like Gorsuch, and they don't like Roberts, and they don't like the other conservatives, Amy Coney Barrett. But they despise Clarence Thomas, and I think the reason is obvious. He is the most independent, the most fierce, and he's black. He's a black man who refuses ultimately to stay on the leftist plantation. Notice that the left loves blacks that stay on the plantation and is not reluctant to torment blacks ceaselessly. They tried it with Clarence Thomas's nomination. That failed. They smell an opportunity to keep going now. They've recruited this kind of useful idiot, J.MichaelLuttig. And when I say useful idiot, I don't mean that he's really an idiot. I'm using in the phrase in the way that Lenin used it. It's someone who makes themselves useful to the other side because they stand in some ways to benefit from it. Just when you thought it couldn't get any better, well, Mike Lindell and MyPillow have launched My Mattress Topper 2.0. The new 3-inch MyPillow mattress topper is made up of 3 unique layers. Layer 1, MyPillow patented foam, which provides superior support and durability. Layer 2, transitional foam, which provides optimal comfort, evenly distributes body weight, and helps relieve pressure points. And layer 3, the cover, made from a special material to keep your body temperature regulated through the night. This MyPillow mattress topper is washable and dryable. It's made in the USA, comes with a 10-year warranty and a 60-day money-back guarantee. This incredible 3-inch mattress topper is as low as $219.59 with promo code Dinesh. So go ahead and call 800-876-0227. Again, the number 800-876-0227. Or go to mypillow.com. Don't forget to use the promo code DINESH Dinesh. Kim Gardner is the district attorney in St. Louis. She is a Soros-funded DA. The sad truth is that many of our cities are now under the control of these Soros-funded DAs. The worst DAs, they're pro-criminal. They don't prosecute a lot of crimes. They even let very bad guys out on the street. Sometimes they go on to do bad things again. And this is what Soros is paying for. Evidently, this is what Soros wants. And Kim Gardner is one of Soros's kind of bought and paid for DAs. And she has been acting consistent with the Soros DA MO, and that is to say that she has been seeing crime rise, and she has been taking the side of the criminal. She throws out court cases because she says the cops are racist. Homicide and car thefts in St. Louis are not only rival other cities, but they rival third world cities. There was a horrific crime in February. A repeat offender was let out on bail multiple times. And he goes on to run his car into a young teen volleyball sensation who lost both of her legs as she was walking home from a volleyball tournament. The guy, Daniel Riley, had violated his bond over 100 times and is still roaming the streets of St. Louis. Now, the authorities have decided this is enough, and it's time to get rid of Kim Gardner. And so the Missouri Attorney General has filed a case basically saying that this woman is deliberately negligent of her duties. And that, by the way, is grounds for removal. So the case has now gone to court. Kim Gardner tried to have the case dismissed, but the judge said no. The judge said that there is cause here to move forward with the case. Now, it's not enough to show that Kim Gardner is incompetent. Because, of course, if that were the standard, 2/3 of our public officials would be removed. They are not doing their job. Not doing your job is not enough. You have to be willfully not doing your job. And there's plenty of evidence that Kim Gardner actively pulls prosecutors off cases. Many times when cases go to trial, the lawyers from the DA's office, from her office, don't even show up. And so the case then gets dismissed and the bad guy gets out on the street. So this is the way that Kim Gardner operates. And it seems to be quite obviously by design. But there's an interesting new wrinkle that has now surfaced that I want to mention. And that is that evidently Kim Gardner, even as she is the DA of St. Louis, has been trying to move into a career in healthcare. So the acting DA of St. Louis is evidently taking classes in the healthcare profession. Now, when this was brought up in the case, like, what the heck? You're supposed to be devoting your full-time duties to this job, but you're enrolled apparently in a full program of healthcare. And Kim Gardner, unbelievably, makes the statement that I'm not quoting it because it's so funny. Circuit Attorney Gardner believes the issues in our criminal justice system often relate to our broken healthcare system. So she's basically saying, I'm taking classes to enter the healthcare profession because it's related to my job. It's job related, guys. It's part of what DAs do.
Not a social worker.
Yeah, that's right. It's So this woman, it seems to me, is wicked, corrupt, and incompetent all at the same time. The incompetence, though, here is by design. It's not the incompetence of I don't know how to show up in court. I don't know how to push forward these prosecutions. It's that I don't want to. And I don't know, again, if the evil incarnate himself, Soros, is whispering into her ear. I don't think Soros these days communicates directly with people, but his son is very active. And Soros sends his money through a plethora of intermediate groups. So Soros gives money to this group, and this group then gives money to Alvin Bragg. Soros gives money to this group, and this group gives money to Kim Gardner. All the money, in a sense, is a flow-through type of investment. And it's an investment in what? The destruction of our cities. Evidently, Democrats have come to believe, or at least the Democratic left, that the destruction of our cities is a good thing. Emboldening criminals is a good thing. And you can see the effect of this in cities like St. Louis, which is largely ruined, Detroit, which is where home property values now are no greater than they were in many neighborhoods 50 years ago. San Francisco, I'll talk about this perhaps next week. In a segment, San Francisco is essentially unwinding with large acres and acres of office buildings now with very low occupancy. People are moving out. Very difficult to get rentals in San Francisco. Very difficult to fill rental apartments. So this is how Democrats are, and people who vote for Democrats are, in a sense, getting what they voted for. But it looks like because Missouri is a red state, the Attorney General is trying to do something about this, is using his power to take this to court. That's a very good thing. By the way, that's a lesson for the Attorney General of Texas, the Attorney General in Florida, the Attorney General in many of the other red states. If you have Soros-funded DAs who are not doing their job, take them to court. Debbie and I started eating better this year. We've lost weight, but foods we can't seem to eat enough of, and it's a requirement, are veggies and fiber. Now, what better way to get all your fruits and veggies plus fiber than with Balance of Nature? Balance of Nature fiber and spice right here. It's a proprietary blend of 12 spices for digestive health. The intense flavors and deep colors of the spices are the most condensed whole food source of phytonutrition available. It's recommended to be paired with these, the star product, fruits and veggies in a capsule. So easy. Select the whole health system for the best price. Start your journey to better health right now. Take advantage of Balance of Nature's great offer, $25 off plus free fiber and spice with your first preferred order of fruits and veggies when you use discount code AMERICA. The offer can end at any time, so act now. Call 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com. Use discount code AMERICA. I want to talk about an interesting scholarly debate that is taking place between an evolutionary biologist named Colin Wright and two prominent professors. One is Agustin Fuentes, a professor of anthropology at Princeton, and the other is Anne Fausto Sterling, who I believe taught in the History of Science program at Yale. And the issue is very simple. How many sexes are there in the human species and also in the animal kingdom? So Colin Wright takes the standard long-time scientific position, which is that there are two sexes. And his reasoning is pretty simple. In fact, I'm going to quote him. There are only two types of gametes, sperm and ova. So here you go. Men produce sperm. Women produce ova, eggs, and that there are people who might have rare intersex conditions, but they don't produce some third type of gamete. They really are just the two. You got sperm and you got ova. Now, this would seem to be as obvious a statement as you can make, but along comes Agustin Fuentes, who says, quote, that Colin Wright's statement is, quote, a prime example of why people really need to learn about biology in general and human biology in particular. So he evidently claims that he's got some sort of a refutation of Colin Wright, and he's joined by Anne Fausto Sterling, again, not someone who is a scientist herself, but she's in the History of Science program, and she is cheering on her ally, Agustin Fuentes. And by the way, this is the same Anne Fausto Sterling who said once that there were 5 sexes in humans. And then when she was challenged by various biologists who said, okay, well, name the 5 sexes. And more importantly, this is not just a matter of naming them. Tell us what are the unique characteristics of each of these 5 sexes. And Fausto Sterling backs off and basically goes that she was kidding. She says that she was being, quote, tongue-in-cheek. And there, well, really aren't 5 sexes after all, even though she has never retracted her statement. And lots of other people who don't know a whole lot about biology keep circulating it. And there are places now where you can read online that there are 72 sexes, 85 sexes, and so on. Now, this whole debate has really 2 parts to it. There are 2 refutations to Colin Wright. The first one I already mentioned, and that is the idea that you've got some people, this is an extremely rare condition, it's sometimes called hermaphroditism, and it has to do with people who are born with kind of in-between or intermediate sex organs. Now, Colin Wright knows this, every biologist knows this, and he goes on to say that, listen, that doesn't really matter because the existence of this intermediate condition doesn't dispute the fact that men produce sperm and women produce eggs. It's not, again, as if we have these intermediate humans who produce, cookies or produce something other than sperm and eggs. There is no way to do that. What you essentially have are people who are born with a kind of deformity. It's kind of like saying human beings have 2 arms and 2 legs, now admittedly, and 10 fingers and 10 toes, and some people are maybe born with 9 fingers or with 7 toes, but that doesn't really prove that humans don't have 10 fingers and 10 toes. Now, this Fuentes guy from Princeton goes on to say that that there are, that what is true, what is being said about humans, that humans exist kind of on a spectrum, is also true of the animal kingdom. He goes, most animals have two sexes, but some have more than two, and some have only one. Let's not even get started on plants. And these are fallacies, but they are clever fallacies, and we need to know why this statement is wrong. Colin Wright replies as follows. Sexes, this is the distinction between the sexes, is a phenomenon that exists only within anisogamous species. So what are those species? They're species that reproduce via the fusion of two differently sized gametes. So let's notice that the male gametes are really small, right? They are the sperm. The female gametes are large, which is the ova. And so there is no species that has ever evolved that comes in three different sizes. Let's just say small, medium, and large, or small, large, and extra large. So there are only two sexes that exist in nature, male and female. Admittedly, there are animals that don't use the system of sexual reproduction at all, and admittedly there are plants that don't either, but that is not to the purpose at all. All we're trying to say is that within the animal kingdom, as with human beings, there are two sexes. There are not three, there are not five, and there certainly are not 72. So as Colin Wright sums it up, the terms male and female were never meant to represent anything beyond fundamental reproductive strategies. And moreover, understanding the universal definition of male and female rooted in gamete size provides a deep insight into evolutionary dynamics. So what is the point of this debate? It is to demonstrate that the age-old wisdom and the simple practice that when a child is born, the doctor examines the child, looks basically at its physical makeup. This is a boy, this is a girl. That is not only observationally true, it is also scientifically true. Aches and pains have totally met their match. Debbie and I started taking Relief Factor a couple of years ago. The difference we've seen in our joints, nothing short of amazing. Aches and pains are totally gone thanks to this 100% drug-free solution called Relief Factor. Now, how does it work? Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation that's the source of aches and pains. The vast majority of people who try Relief Factor order more. They become regular customers because it works for them. Debbie's a regular customer. She's now able to do the exercises that for a long time she wasn't able to do. It's been a real game changer for her, her aunt, other members of our family, Mike here in the studio, and for many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. You'll see. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of just $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 800-4-RELIEF to find out more about the offer. Again, the number to call, 800-4-RELIEF, or go to relieffactor.com. You'll feel the difference. I want to talk about the benefits of historical forgetfulness. Yes, forgetfulness. Now, we're often reminded of the opposite, which is the benefits of historical memory. You might have heard the phrase, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it. And that's an argument for historical knowledge and for historical remembering. But is there a case for historical forgetfulness? In other words, for letting go of certain things that have happened, particularly if they've happened a long time ago. I want to argue that there is. And this is true, by the way, not just for people and ethnic groups and countries. It's also true for us as individuals. I mean, think, for example, of something that might have happened to you a long time ago, which might have been very traumatic. And it's something that you do remember, and it's something that has shaped your life. But at some point you realize, I'm better off if I can figure out a way to let it go. The same is true of some ancient grudge, or someone did you a horrible wrong a long time ago. Again, it's better to let it go, not just because you're a decent and good person, not just because you're living up to the highest moral virtues. It's good for your own psyche. You're able to get along better with life if you do that. There's a interesting story from the writer Jorge Luis Borges, the Chilean or Argentine, I think Argentine writer. I think so too. Anyway, so Borges has this writer. It's about a guy in Uruguay who's only 19 years old, but he's born with a rare condition. Everything that he sees and knows and reads, he cannot forget. And so this guy literally becomes, through this head injury, first of all, because his mother is multilingual, he learns English, Portuguese, Latin, and French. He just thumbs through the dictionary, and everything that he reads goes into his head and stays there. He develops this prodigious memory. And yet, as the story develops, he realizes that it's no good. It actually, not only can he not use most of this information, but it's actually shutting his mind down, not just because there's too much of it, but because all our intelligence is about discriminating. It's about making choices. It's about being able to see a pattern and exclude all the information. Think about when you're in a crowded room and you're talking to one person. What are you trying to do? Screen out all the other noise that's going on around you so you can listen to this one person. And that ability to screen out, which is another way of saying to forget. If it comes into your ear, it's like in one ear and out the other. So there's a benefit here. This is the point of the story, to a certain type of forgetting. And I think that this is also true sometimes of cultures and of countries. Look at South Africa. They had decades and decades of apartheid. They had these truth and reconciliation commissions that were aimed at creating a way for the society to move on. Now, have they in fact moved on, I would argue no. In fact, a lot of the blood vengeance, a lot of the seizure of farms that's going on in South Africa. South Africa is not doing very well as a country. It had tremendous promise. It was far and away the most successful country in Africa. And of course, there is going to be a racist point of view that says once the blacks took over, look what's happened to South Africa. But I think what it is that the South Africans haven't learned the benefits of a certain amount of selective, I'm not saying entire, historical amnesia. The 30 Years' War, when we think back to history, was concluded with a deliberate act of amnesia. And by the way, the word amnesia comes, the word amnesia is related to the word amnesty. Amnesty and amnesia both have to do with forgetting. And amnesty is a forgiving and forgetting of something that has happened. And so after the 30 Years' War, which was a war over religion to some degree, not entirely, political motives also entered, but it was solved ultimately at the end by saying, okay, listen, let's agree to a principle, which is that the religion of the king is going to be the religion of the state. This is the sort of Treaty of Westphalia, 1648. And that is, as a practical matter, a way of resolving the issue. No more recriminations, no need to chase down every Catholic or every Protestant who fought on the wrong side or committed crimes during the war. We're going to create a sort of settlement principle so that we can move forward. And all of this is, you may say, well, what about the Holocaust, Dinesh? What about never again? What about never forget? Well, I agree. We're not going to forget the Holocaust, but I'm struck by a comment, and this is quoted in the New York Review of Books. It's a Holocaust survivor, Ruth Kluger. She goes, I think of redemption as closely linked to the flow of time. We speak of the virtues of memory, but forgetfulness has its own virtue. And I think what she's thinking about here is not so much forgetting historically, but forgetting for herself, or perhaps even for her family. If her family members think about themselves merely as Holocaust victims and extensions of the Holocaust, that produces a kind of narrowness. They can't go on with life. In some ways, you can say you can't even smile anymore. Why? Because every time you want to smile and your lips begin to move toward a smile, you remember the Holocaust, and then you can't smile. So forgetfulness here is not only a moral strategy, but it's a survival strategy, both for individuals and sometimes for whole nations. I'm going to conclude my discussion today of the crimes of atheism, and I've gone on to show so far that these crimes far exceed the relatively small potatoes, the negligible, the infinitesimal by comparison crimes of religion. And so the crimes of religion are a dozen people here, 24 there, 1,000, 2,000. But the crimes of atheism go into the hundreds of thousands, the millions, the tens of millions, and in aggregate, even past 100 million. I've also showed that these crimes are not incidental to atheism. They are driven by an atheist ideology. Communism and socialism are both atheist ideologies. Nazism was too, although it was an atheist ideology with some peculiarities and twists to it. But nevertheless, it was a not only anti-God, but specifically anti-Christianity, something that Hitler, as we've seen, passionately hated. Now, when you think about why these crimes occurred on the part of atheist regimes, part of it, as I mentioned, was crimes committed in the name of science, in the name of reason, in the name of progress. But there's another reason that we tend to miss or tend to forget, and this is what I want to highlight today. Another reason for the horrors of these atheist regimes is that they operate without the normal moral restraints that are the product of human nature, the product of religion, and these moral restraints have traditionally held back even very bad people from being even worse than they have been. In some way, when you obliterate moral restraints, people become monsters. And the philosopher Nietzsche, of all people, an atheist himself, saw this coming. Writing in the 19th century, he said, look, the 20th century and the subsequent centuries are going to be the most violent centuries that we have ever seen. More cataclysmic, horrible wars, horrible mass killings, genocide, violence beyond all imagining. He said, the death of God, this is Nietzsche talking, he said, would result in an eclipse, an erasure, a removal of moral values, the moral values that came out of God. And so since values no longer come from God, they now have to be made up by men. And since man is descended from the animal kingdom, Nietzsche kind of got this from Darwin, man is likely to embrace the value of the lust for domination, the lust for power, survival of the fittest. Nietzsche's will to power is not exactly the same as Darwin's survival of the fittest, but you can see the similarity, the kinship between the two ideas. And Nietzsche predicted superior humans would eliminate inferior ones for the same reason that lions eat antelopes. Master morality, as Nietzsche calls it, prevails over slave morality. And in the past, when something like this begins to happen, people would appeal, where's your dignity? Where's your compassion? Where's your humanity, your fellow feeling? And Nietzsche goes, there's no point appealing to that because those values are the inheritance of Christianity. If Christianity goes, then no one's going to talk about pity or compassion or universal human brotherhood. This is like telling lions that they should stop being lions. So the atheist bloodbath is the product of a hubristic modern ideology that sees man and not God as the creator of values. In rejecting God, man becomes scornful of the doctrine of human sinfulness and convinced of the perfectibility of his own nature. Man now seeks to displace God and create a secular utopia here on earth. In fact, what ends up happening is men invent a form of totalitarianism far more comprehensive than anything that previous rulers attempted. Every aspect of life comes under political and ideological supervision. Of course, there'll be people who are out of the program, don't go along with it. The Jews, the landowners, the kulaks, the unfit, the handicapped, the religious dissidents. And so these people then have to be relocated, incarcerated, liquidated in order to achieve the utopia. And atheists typically go, well, so what? You have to, if you want to make an omelet, you have to break some eggs. The old moral codes do not apply, and ordinary atheist functionaries carry out behavior that would make even a grand inquisitor quake. The atheist regimes, by their actions, confirm the truth of Dostoevsky's dictum, if God is not, everything is permitted. That's a phrase worth thinking about. You could write a whole book on it. If God is not, everything is permitted. Whatever the cause for why atheist regimes do what they do, the indisputable fact is that all the religions of the world put together, and I'm including here radical Islam going back to the 7th century, have in 3,000 years not managed to kill anywhere near the number of people killed in the name of atheism in just the past, let's say, several decades or perhaps a century. It's time to abandon the mindlessly repeated mantra that religious belief has been the main source of human conflict and violence. It's not true. Atheism, not religion, is responsible for the worst mass murders of history.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.